Cleveland Guardians added 4 prospects to their roster at the Rule 5 protection deadline. We'll tell you what it means for where their roster is and what happens to the players they didn't protect.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Guardians fans? Thanks for hanging out with us for the next half hour. We talk about what's going on with your Cleveland Guardians on this episode of Locked On Guardians, the only daily podcast that covers your team every day, from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network, because you made it that way. If you're every day, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Justin Lada, one of your 2 co-hosts, have been for the last 3 years and counting before joining my friend and co-host Jeff Ellis. I have spent 18 years and counting, hopefully, covering the Guardians farm system as a prospect writer and editor.
As you mentioned, I'm Jeff Ellis. I've been here since the start of Locked On Baseball. Before this, I was a national writer at Scout 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. I want to take a moment and say thank you for making today's episode your first listen today, every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers out there. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the comments. I'm glad we are getting better with the technical side of things. I've spent hours working on it, so thank you for all the positive comments today.
Yes, we like having all the sentences and thoughts from Jeff in complete form and not robotic. On today's show, we'll get into if there's any players that didn't get protected by other teams that we are interested in, or that were the result of moves that got made. We'll talk about a bunch of those players. We'll talk about which players the Guardians could lose from their decisions on Rule 5 Protection Day. But we'll start off talking about decisions they did make to protect prospects, what it means for them, and what it means for where their roster is at. So Guardians didn't make any real surprising moves today, but they did make plenty of news, so we have to break that all down. And this episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 on the FanDuel app. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Go ahead and download it today. All right, so no surprises about who the Guardians protected overall. You and I both got 100%, which is great because I was a terrible student in school. So getting 100% on anything for me is always a good thing. So let's get into who they protected and what the impacts are. So let's start with Angel Genao. Obviously, that was the slam dunk. And I think the question now is that now that his clock starts, how soon can he get to the majors? And can he finally be the shortstop they've been looking for since they traded Francisco Lindor?
He's not the shortstop you're looking for.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
I mean, I think he could be. I'm not going to sit back and say it's an absolute no-go. They don't have a lot of guys actually in the upper part of the system who I think can handle the position with any degree of skill, who are going to be more than... I don't even think they have a lot of guys, honestly, who could be average defenders in the upper tiers right now. They haven't targeted shortstops in a while, and the guys they have just haven't worked out. So it's in some respects, it's almost a positional weakness. So I think he's got a chance.
How ironic.
If don't you think? But I think more importantly, the focus here is the bat. I think he could play a lot of positions for this team, depending on need. And, I know Mondays was choppy, but one of the things I really want to get out this year and stand on my Apple box and scream and get in front of, and my political campaign is the join me in the party of there's no such thing as blocking prospects. If guys are good enough, they force a hand, they force their way up, they'll find a position for you, especially when it's the Cleveland Guardians, who end up playing 3 to 4 guys who are below league average and significantly below at that per year. So Genao, whether it's shortstop of the future or somewhere else, he'll find a home, he'll find a job. I have pure faith in that. The ability, the talent, the skill is there. It could be shortstop. I'm not going to rule that out, but I think don't worry about, he's blocked or this or that. No, if he's good enough, he'll find a time. And I don't think he's blocked at shortstop, because as much as I want to love Gabby due to the defense and the arm and the power, the swing decisions are going to make it hard.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of reservation on Genao with swing decisions. Like, there is a bit of aggressiveness to that profile. I don't think he's going to walk a lot. And I think that ultimately might hold him back a little bit. But the nice thing about him is he definitely, to me, I think can play shortstop. He's got to work on his arm accuracy, and he's got to work on some stuff with his hands and footwork. But overall, he's got the range. He's got the quickness. He's got the arm strength to play shortstop. I don't doubt that. It's just the little details he's got to get down. I think that'll come with time. And he also, missed a good chunk of 2025 with a shoulder injury. So the nice thing is his strikeout rate when he got to Double-A didn't go up. His walk rate actually did go up just a tiny bit. So that's a good sign. There was not a lot of power there, but I will tell you what I saw in Lake County. And this may not always translate, but this is a guy who was hitting 110-mile-an-hour line drives to the opposite field as a switch hitter. So there's more punch in the bat than a guy like Brian Rocchio. So that's where I have faith, is he's got some separator tools that I think could make him the shortstop of the future. But again, we're talking about a 2027 player. And then again, like you said, there's no such thing as blocking. If Angel Genao goes out and plays with his hair on fire in 2026 and forces their hand and nobody else is claiming shortstop, why the heck not? But I think it's more likely 2027. Let's go to Austin Peterson, the one guy on this list who, Watson has AAA experience. We'll get to him. But Peterson also had a lot of AAA experience. So now that he's on the 40-man roster, is he a depth option for 2026? I think so. I think the question about him now is, what is his role, and does his addition create some flexibility into moving any pitcher this offseason to add a bat?
I think he's a really interesting player from the perspective of, here's a 9th round pick, a guy who I believe was even underslot in the 9th round. Cleveland doesn't have a rich history there. But he's just constantly performed, and he's done the things you need to be successful. Best 9th round pick is Luke Scott. Second best is Kieran
Best outfielder.
Yeah. Third best, Dustin Moore. 4th is Vic Alberry, and 5 is Chris Beasley. It's okay. I don't know who those last 2 are either. So yeah, it's not around. They have really excelled with, if you want the recent names, by the way, Preston Guillemette and Sean DePaula were the names that stood out to me.
Oh, Preston Guillemette. I was a big fan.
Here's the thing with Peterson. He's big. He has extension, like really good extension. We know a year ago, Tampa was into him. We heard reports like there are teams that like him. He's got a an off-speed pitch that works for him. Third pitch is very fringy, but he also doesn't walk anyone. So when you add like what there is it a package to be, a potential 4? No, it's a 5. He is a back end 5th rotation starter, but he's been really healthy. There has not been a lot of hiccups. He's steadily moved through the minors in spite of his stuff being kind of minimal. He's always missed bats. Just to throw a comparison in the other direction, like a guy you and I talked about, we're like, well, we'll finally see what happens when he gets to AAA. Either he's going to be exposed or we're undervaluing him. And that was Will Dion, and he got exposed. Whereas Peterson moved up to AAA and he still took care of business. Now the K rates weren't as high as in the past, but he still took care of business. He's probably your 6th or 7th starter, probably like your 7th starter, honestly, maybe more like your 7th or 8th, but you need that depth. I think I talked about in my now, it's like, it's more like they decided it made more sense to keep him at league minimum than pay John Means $6 million. Those were the 2 guys fighting for that roster spot and fighting for the same job on the team. And I can't disagree with that, with what we saw a year ago. So I like him a lot. I mean, Peterson's top 15 guy for me still. And I think that he is a guy who, can be a spot starter, can give them, some innings and do some things. And if they do need to move someone, if that's their best path to getting a bat, then it also does give them a little more flexibility because you need all of that depth.
Yeah, the only guy I can sit here and say, like, okay, if you're adding Peterson to the roster and you want to use a pitcher to add a bat, I can't sit there and say, well, if we add Peterson, we can move like Joey Cantillo for a bat, because you can't. Peterson to me is not going to replace Cantillo. The only guy to me that can replace Cantillo is Messick or Cal Steffen. I'm gonna probably get that wrong a couple more times before I get it right consistently. Those are the only 2 guys in the rotation I think could replace someone like Cantillo if you use him to trade for a bat. Peterson's not going to fill that role. He's going to backfill more than anything. Yeah. We've talked about in the past about him having comparisons to Josh Tomlin, which is very similar. I could see some Eli Morgan. I do think he has an interesting pitch mix. Could work very well as a reliever. I think there's a pathway there for him to be an effective reliever, but this is a guy who I think very easily would have stuck on a 40-man roster next year, or 26-man roster, because he throws strikes, he's big, he throws a lot of innings if you need to, and the command is there. So I think that's going to make him easily targetable. So it made sense to add him. All right, We have to talk about Yorman Gomez, Kahlil Watson, and who the Guardians didn't protect and what it means on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Things are heating up in the NBA. The Cavs are playing well, even though they're not healthy. LeBron James is back. All kinds of fun stuff. And there's no better place to get in on all that fun action than with over our friends at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you miss the start of a game, or you want to ride the hot hand as you join in the contest, FanDuel has live bets on who's going to score next, 2 fourth quarter comebacks. You can combine all of your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. That keeps everything more exciting late in the game. Cavs giving up 1 point to the Houston Rockets. They host them tonight, and that should be a fun one to keep an eye on. There's also odds on FanDuel right now for the World Baseball Classic, Jeff's favorite time of the year. I can't wait till that comes back. United States is plus 155 to win that tournament. We'll see how that goes as other rosters get announced. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers of Locked On Guardians $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. WBC. It's back, baby. It's back.
Oh, great. So we can see someone like Kate Smith go out and overthrow his arm and then not be prepared for the season. Ruin it, man? Yay. Why so Jose can get hurt and then we won't have access. Yay. It's been a net negative every single year they've had it for the Cleveland guys who've gone out and played. I don't think we've seen anyone. The pitching, it's always ended up being a negative. So, yeah, I'm not excited about the World Baseball Classic because I don't care. I care about the Guardians. Full stop.
Doesn't care about his country. All right, so let's get into who, well, we can't really get into who didn't get protected, but we also want to talk about how grateful we are for you guys to make Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcast. And an even bigger thank you to everybody who has made the show number one, not the show, but the network overall number one. We're number one in your hearts, I'm sure, about Guardians content now. That you can keep up to date with all things Guardians all off season long. You want to hit that bell on YouTube. If you did, you got the notifications of Jeff's and I's reactions to the Rule 5 ads that came on at about 6:10 Eastern, which was 10 minutes after the deadline, which actually is more like on time for the Guardians, considering how they operate. I told everybody ahead of time, I was like, it's going to be after 6. Like, don't expect it before 6.
Wait, I thought it was at 4.
Yeah, I thought it was at 4 too. Yeah, no, it was 4 p.m. for qualifying offer and 4 p.m. Friday.
Teams need time to figure out what they're going to do after the qualifying offer.
So you'll get all those notifications for when we put videos up, whether it's an episode or reaction on YouTube. And if you auto download on all your audio apps where you get podcasts, you can take us wherever you go, your car, your walk with the dog, the gym, doing the dishes, raking the leaves, my least favorite thing to do, all that kind of good stuff. All right. So we didn't get into Yorman Gomez a whole lot. What does this say about, we need to. You and I were like pretty sure he was the second most likely. I had him. 100%. We both had Genao and Gomez as the 1-2, and then after that we said Peterson, Watson. This is a big move for Gomez and for the Guardians, because obviously the Guardians like him, and what it says is that they believe in the gains he made this year. He is now gone from a guy who was 93, 94 to being more 94, 96, hitting 97 with the fastball, and he's got a good slider to go with it now. And, there's a decent curveball. He does have a changeup that could use some work. But I think what this says is obviously the Guardians felt like he had enough stuff now, and teams had seen him enough, and the data and the results and the reports, that he would have been someone they could have hidden the pen for sure. I don't know whether his pathway is as a starter. He's not somebody I expect them to, not somebody I think who will impact the team in 2026. But I do think it's somebody that would have tried to add him to the roster and see if he could stick as a reliever. So he'll go back to Akron in 2026 to build off that. And you keep starting him until he proves he can't. And then hopefully he pushes his way to Columbus in some sort of role, I would say. Maybe they'll put him in Columbus. Maybe now he's on the 40-man roster. We were told last year that the Guardian, we thought the Guardians were going to start Parker Messick in AA last year. And that sounded very frustrating to everybody involved. And then they ended up starting with AAA, and it worked out great. So maybe now that he's on the 40, he will go right to AAA, and I hope he does, actually.
with his size and pitch mix, he's reliever all the way to me. I understand why I let
I
him
agree.
start. I understand. But here's the thing, like the thing about having him start, to explain it, is that the longer you have him start, it's more innings, it's more reps in that regard. You get more innings as a starter, so you have guys stick in that role longer. But I think very specifically with him, I agree. Start him in AAA, start the things going for him, because I think he could be someone who's like a September call-up area. Like if he hasn't thrown enough innings, it's like he could be a really interesting pen arm because he has touched upper 90s, I want to say. He does have a devastating secondary pitch. He has those things where put him in the pen and no one's seen him. He could come out and be a weapon for this team if they're in contention come September. So the stuff is excellent. Like if we're just talking about like the relief guys in the bullpen right now, the guys that I project as relievers, highest ceiling guy is Espino. Oki is 2 for me, and 3 is Gomez. Just in terms of ceiling amongst relievers, like guys who I think could be like 8th inning guys. Like again, and I could be proven wrong on any of them, and maybe they'll work as starters. But that's just my off the cuff ranking there. So I think it's a great addition. Is an easy add. He's a borderline like top 12, top 13 guy for me right now.
Yeah, easily in the top 20, which is funny because there's a lot of outlets that didn't have him anywhere near there.
He wasn't ranked
or 20s
in MLBs.
Yeah, and he's easily a top 20 guy without a doubt. So that brings us to Kahlil Watson, who was probably the most, I don't want to say divisive, but like we kept saying, like it's probably likely they're going to add him because they just don't want to lose him for nothing. We've talked about what we don't like about Watson, and it's very obvious what we don't like, and it has a lot to do with the fact that he does things, or the lack of things he can do are what holds most prospects back. And that's the fact that he chases out of the zone too much, and he swings and misses in the zone too much. And those are things that, make prospects fail the most. But even despite that, the numbers were really good last year. He hit for power. He has speed. He did make the required move to the outfield, at least in terms of, putting the work in and making that work for him. He's pretty good in the outfield. I think he's got some strides to make in terms of defense. I don't think he's great out there, but I think he has enough tools to make it work. And he accepted that change, which is great. That's what you want. He runs well. He gets the ball in the air and hits the ball hard. And this is a profile the Guardians just don't have a lot on. We talked a lot yesterday about risk and whether or not the Guardians take enough risks. Adding him isn't even a risk because you don't have a whole lot of guys in your system like Kahlil Watson. You already traded for him as a lottery ticket on the Josh Bell trade, which is a great buy low and high reward thing for him. At this point, there's no risk to keeping him. Like you said, prospects aren't blocked. They make their own way. And him being on the 40-man roster does not cost them somebody else more valuable. He doesn't get in the way of anybody else. So I think it makes tons of sense. The profile is definitely risky, but I don't think the decision is. Maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe he'll make strides, but those are 2 red flags against his offensive profile. But they need guys like this. And at the very least, because he's a former big name and he did have the results last year, I wouldn't have been surprised if some team said, you know what, for the little it takes to draft him in Rule 5, we'll roster him and see if it works. Because he can play center field and he can play, second, short, and third. So he can easily fit on a bench as a pinch runner with power and speed and defensive versatility. So there was a lot of risk in losing him. I'll be curious to see how they handle him because the outfield on the 40 is so crowded right now. But it makes tons of sense to add him, even if I don't feel like his future is all that certain.
Yeah, it's not a profile that leads to success. And I know people are excited because he hits the home runs and he's always smacked the heck out of the ball. I mean, heck, go back to his draft year. I had him as the 5th rated player in that draft class. And I ignored the off the field chatter. I ignored some of the other things that came with him. And unfortunately, a lot of that is played out to be true. There's talent, there's tools, there's traits. The negs are all the things that hold a guy back, though. And, I'd love to be proven wrong again. But when you're looking at where you are, a guy who could potentially be a super utility guy, why not? With his athleticism, with all the spots he's played, with some power potential. Someone asked me, would he be in the possibility for center field? And I was like, not to start the year. No, he's going right to AAA, and he might be there in camp, but he's not. No, he's not in the running to be the center fielder next year. He's not even the running to be more than a backup next year.
No, and I could, again, we talked about maybe him getting traded on deadline day to let somebody else roster him for not having to have the Rule 5 protection rules, but that didn't end up happening. And I still wouldn't be surprised if they used him in a trade this offseason. At least this way, you protect him and you don't let somebody else take him for free, and you can make a decision later on whether or not somebody else finds value. But yeah, like there's two things you have to do to be successful as a hitter, right? It's not strike out and it's barrel the ball. Well, he does barrel the ball, but he strikes out a ton. And the reason he strikes out a ton is because he misses in the zone. It's not just that he chases, it's zone contact was 28th percentile. That's pretty bad. The higher you want to be higher, and lower is pretty bad. So you can't miss in the zone and also chase out of the zone. One of those things you have to do very well, and he doesn't do either. But we'll see. He's on the 40-man roster, and that makes things interesting. Also, who is no longer on the roster and who is not added to the roster, we'll break that down next and what that means for the Guardians the rest of the offseason. If you need more Guardians talk to keep you warm, it was a little bit warmer here today in Cleveland, I will say. It's going to get cold again soon. But, the holidays are coming up and you want to talk ball with your uncle who, maybe he doesn't understand baseball in 2025, but you do because you listen to Locked On Guardians. You can head on over and follow Jeff at Jeff MLB Draft. You can follow me at jail_baseball or jail baseball. You can join the Locked
On
Baseball.
Guardians. What was that? I'm kidding.
Yeah, jail baseball. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm on. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I'm not the most interesting person at the holidays, but maybe that person would be. Join the Locked On Guardians Insiders Club. We text with the community daily when they had the news first on who was added to the 40 and the moves that were made. They give us our mailbag questions for those episodes, and we do monthly video chats, which may or may not do after Thanksgiving. So stay tuned for that. That's joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians to tap in. All right, so I guess the first unfortunate thing we have to address is Nic Enright was taken off the roster on the 40. He was DFA'd. That sucks because it's just another roadblock for his career. Like, he's not going to play next year because of Tommy John, which, he was having a nice little breakout for the Guardians. He was looking like a good 6th or 7th inning reliever the way he was progressing this year. So that really sucks for him. The good news, if there's any good news about being DFA'd, is that he's probably not going to get claimed, and he doesn't have enough service time to, I believe, elect free agency, which means he'll go to Columbus, at least on paper, and he'll rehab with the team and stay here. So that's good news. It's with the team he knows that supported him and hopefully can rehab him back to health and where he was trending to earlier this season.
Yeah, so for those who don't understand, it just comes down to that. There is, I would say, like a 90% chance that cutting him right now means they keep him and he stays, a Cleveland Guardian. It stinks for him because it puts him, further away. But I believe at the end of next year, they would have to make a contract or he'd be a minor league free agent again. So, like, there is the danger of that. So, like, it's something that could work out well to a degree for both sides. The one team I would keep an eye on for claiming him is the Los Angeles Dodgers. They have taken guys who are hurt, and one of the big things that they are huge fans of is IVB, induced vertical break. And Nic Enright had some of the best induced vertical break of any pitcher in baseball last year. The Dodgers are the team that claimed Alex Vesia, right, who turned him into a starter, focused on the fact that he had the best IVB in baseball. So the Dodgers could come a calling here. I wouldn't be shocked just due to some of the traits and other things. It sucks for Nic Enright, but again, it's just logical, right? They think they can get him through, and you always need roster fodder. If you're like, why haven't they cut Nolan Jones? Why haven't they cut this guy? Because you need roster fodder. They're hoping to make other moves, get other things done. You don't want to be at your max, because if you put this at max, then you got to cut someone who's good, right? You're always trying to work the fringes to give yourself a little more breathing room.
Right, and that's where the Guardians have to be good at, is they have to be good on the fringes of their roster, because that's what gives them depth, and it's what separates them and from other teams who don't spend a lot of money is doing that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think a lot of people were like, why not Nolan Jones? We've been saying that for a while, and I still don't think they're going to pay Nolan Jones. I'd be surprised, because, like, if you look at the outfield right now on the 40-man roster, it's, as of right now, It's Kwan, it's DeLauder, it's Valera, it's Jones, it's Brennan, Noel, Rodriguez, Halpin, Watson. That's a lot of outfielders on the 40.
And Schneemann and Martinez can play there too, and played significant time there as well.
So some of those guys are coming off the 40, whether it's Friday or whether it's later in the offseason.
Breaking news.
Uh-oh.
Taylor Ward was just traded.
Not to Cleveland, I'm guessing.
No, to the Angels for Grayson, or to the Orioles for Grayson Rodriguez.
That's a wild trade.
That's a wild trade. Sorry, I had to interrupt when I got the alert on my mid thought, but
I thought you were going to say Guardians. I was like, all right, well, I guess we're finishing this and doing
I wish, but that's more than I thought he'd get for 1 year. I mean, hasn't Rodriguez been okay? I mean, I know
he's been hurt,
but
yeah,
I don't know.
That's what I'm surprised by. I'm surprised the Orioles gave up on Rodriguez. I'm surprised
because it's just 1 year award.
Yeah, that's really a shock. Yeah. Interesting. So, well, you could take cross Taylor Ward off your list.
And probably Joe Adell with that, because now they can move Adell to right field. So get rid of those names.
Yeah.
Gone.
Well, the Guardians, we're just saying they have to get rid of some outfielders on their own 40 because none of them are as good as Taylor Ward, and there's no point in having all these outfielders on your 40-man roster. So one will come off. Some will come off. I still think by Friday at 4 p.m., we can see them non-tender Nolan Jones. I don't see, what was he going to make? $2 million. I can't see them paying him $2 million. Not when you have all these guys on the roster. I don't see where it makes sense unless you're gonna, like, you could dump Noel or Rodriguez or
you got to dump
Brennan
them at some point. And Brennan,
yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just that Brennan might have options left. I don't know for sure. I have to look if he has options, but like at least he could give you depth when he gets healthy, and Halpin's going to give you depth for that too. And not that we think Watson's an option, but like he'll be there. Maybe they need all these guys because DeLauder and Valera are made of glass, and you need all these. So they need these depth options so they're not screwed when one of those guys in the league gets injured next year. So I guess there is that. The Zach Kent thing too. I know we've talked about like him being off the roster for this. I think it's a roster fodder thing with him too. I think it's you pass Enright through waivers in a day where a lot of moves are happening and teams may not have room before the Rule 5 draft.
2 options for Brennan, just as a heads up.
Yeah, so there's some depth there, I guess, for that. So Enright passes through waivers because their teams aren't going to commit a 40-man spot to him. So that's the smart play there. And then you could eventually move Kent later in the offseason off your roster to add somebody else. So he becomes fodder. So that makes sense too.
And I wouldn't be shocked if they claimed anyone who was let go. There's a few candidates out there that you could see Nolan Jones get let go, or one of these other players we've talked about, if there's someone that they think is interesting or someone they think could potentially provide more value.
There are some names out there that were very interesting, which I don't know if we're going to have time to get to them. Maybe we can record that as a quick bonus, like 5-minute thing. But Steven Perez was left off the roster. I think he's the most likeliest of the options to get picked in the Rule 5 draft because he's left-handed. He throws 96, has a slider. The reason they left him unprotected is because he has very limited AA experience, has him in the AAA. And he did improve his control in 25, but he also, it's still not great control and it's new. So maybe that says that they don't feel like it's going to stick yet. So we'll see. I think that made sense, even though I think he's the most likely guy to be picked off the roster.
You could end up like Gomez near, right? Like, because wasn't Yorman Gomez eligible last year and no one took him?
Yes.
And then he leveled up this year and added him. So I think if you're Steven Perez, you're looking at the Gomez playbook in terms of how you're hoping things progress.
Yeah. I saw some comments about Wuilfredo Antunez being the next Anthony Santander.
I don't see that at all.
I don't either, because Santander, the reason it worked for the Orioles so well is because Santander had Tommy John surgery, so he was going to miss extended time. That allows you to play with so much roster manipulation with him. So they had basically 2 years of him on the Rule 5 track to rehab and develop him in-house.
Santander was go ahead. Sorry.
He was in high A, but yeah, he also had a much better approach than Antunez. Antunez has approach issues. He's got power, he's got speed, he's got a great throwing arm, but the approach is not there. So that's and you can't manipulate your roster with him. Like, he has to be there. The Orioles had 2 years to protect him basically from exposure.
Yeah. And, the bigger part on that too, as well, is like Santander was a 7th overall prospect for me that year. He was a much better prospect. Antunez isn't even top 30 for me. Like they're not even in the same orbits. Talking to people like the glowing about Santander at the time, and that was Santander's first year of eligibility. This is already Antunez's second. That stuff matters as well. So they're not even. That's a silly comparison.
Yeah, I mean the Guardians obviously think he's interesting because they did sign him to a minor league contract instead of letting him go to minor league free agency. So they do like him. Same with Perez. They do like those guys, but not enough to commit a roster spot to them, and that's something to put in your back pocket for the future. They gave him a minor league contract, but didn't add him to the 40. So maybe we should have read those signs early on that was how it was going to go. They could have just added him to the 40.
I mean, that's what that was my comment. I did say that. In fairness to me, that was kind of my take from the start.
I didn't think they would add Antunez. I thought Perez had a chance just because.
I get that.
Yeah, the lefty reliever thing. And then Dylan DeLucia is the last one I have noted here. Again, we talked about him. The stuff is there. He gets up to 96. The fastball has some really great traits to it. The slider's good. He's got control. I don't know if he has command, but he has control. But he has very limited exposure in Double-A and limited innings in pro ball overall. So I think that makes him an unlikely add. But, maybe if some team really liked him in college, then, they can give it a shot.
And we're low on time, but I got to throw in Trenton Denholm, who a lot has been written about. He was great in the AFL, which is not a pitcher-friendly place. Like his fastball has trended up. It's been inconsistent in its velocity. I've always said like he's a guy who needs to move to the pen. If the velocity stays up, he's got the good slider, right? Is that the secondary? I'm trying to remember what a secondary offering is top of my head. He's got one solid side, and then he's added the knuckleball, which is a kind of a third pitch for him. And it's interesting. So if someone likes what they've seen with the knuckleball, there are some teams that do tend to look at that a little bit more. Like I think he is a possibility to take guy.
I'm surprised he didn't get traded today, to be honest. I thought for sure. Yeah, because again, the Guardians have traded their last two knuckleballers, Stephen Wright and Matt Waldron. Yeah, so I'm surprised they didn't just trade him. Maybe some other team liked him, like you said, and didn't want to fool with the Rule 5 and just add him to their own 40 now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's always worth taking the shot. The thing with Denholm is he's not a knuckleball pitcher. He's a pitcher who throws a knuckleball because it's not his primary pitch. He throws a cutter. He throws a curveball. He throws a slider. He throws a changeup, and then he added the knuckleball. So it's a different arsenal. So we'll see what happens to him. Nice guy, by the way, very smart.
Yeah.
Wish the best for him. I always had good interactions with him in Lake County. Tomorrow's show, Jeff Ponce, our favorite guest, your favorite guest, hopefully, joins us. We'll talk about the Guardians' change in approach, the 2025 draft. We'll talk about if the Guardians have any regrets about the 2024 draft. I'm sure we'll touch on some Rule 5 stuff as well. So looking forward to catching up with Jeff. Always good insights and more conversation than we can ever fit into one episode.
Thank you all for joining us. Remember, rate and review, download daily. It helps. Tell us about the Rule 5 or player let go today that you'd most like the Guardians to target. Thank you all, and go Guardians, go.